Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Kenny Conversation, brought to you by JEGS, the leader in high performance aftermarket car parts. Remember to go to jegs.com for everything you need to fix your vehicle or your hot rod up. Deep breath. I said it on X. I said, this is a big one for me. I've been a big fan of this man as a race car driver. Ben Kennedy. Ben, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, Kenny. How are you doing? Thanks for having me on today.
Well, it's sunny here in St. Louis. Are you in Daytona or Charlotte?
I am in beautiful Daytona Beach, Florida. It is sunny and about 75 degrees right now. It's a perfect day for a race. The Daytona 500's over, but it's nice here.
Yes, and that's what Ken Squire used to say. Or no, maybe it was somebody else. It's a beautiful day for a motor race. Well, Ben, I want to start out like this. Who is Ben Kennedy? And I want to say a couple things about you. And if I get them wrong, I want you to interrupt me. But a lot of people don't know everything about you. You're very young. So let's start like this. Ben Kennedy, 32 years old.
Correct. We're off
Ben,
to a good start.
yeah. Hey, I'm 1 for 1, baby.
1 for 1. Yeah. You can stop right there if you want.
Yeah. See you later, everybody.
Yeah.
Ben Kennedy, NASCAR Senior Vice President of Racing Development and Strategy. You started working at NASCAR March 10th, 2022. Is that right?
I started working about 6 years ago, so late January of 2018.
Maybe that was your position. You
That
are
might
the
be my most recent position that I have on the racing
senior.
development strategy team.
Yeah, that's a big some big shoes to fill, and we're going to talk about all this a little later. A little bit
Awesome.
more about who you are. Uh, we all know you. It seems silly that maybe I'm introducing you, but I find you very interesting, and I want to thank you for letting me talk to you. So, Bill France Sr. was your great grandfather, and he started NASCAR. Uh, so you're as close. I mean, you are NASCAR. Am I accurate in this?
Yes. So my great grandfather, to your point exactly, Bill France Sr. started NASCAR in 1948. It was incorporated 76 years ago, and 1 month now. So he founded it, and then my grandfather, Bill France Jr., obviously was involved and led it for a number of years. And then Brian, Lisa, and Jim as well. And Lisa and Jim obviously involved till to this day. So a second generation, a third generation, and I guess myself as a fourth generation, all still being involved in the business.
I got to tell you, I hardly know your mama, but I love your mother, and I'm going to tell you why. Because I was in a suite at Iowa Speedway, and you were racing, and your mom came up there, and now I'm a little nervous because your mom is the boss, right?
Right.
Your great grandfather's gone, your grandpa's gone. It's your mom and Jim France. So your mom comes up in the suite, and I just got my eyes glued to her, and just like a proud mother, she was watching you race that day, and I thought to myself, she's a racer.
Mhm.
So is your mom a racer?
She is. She absolutely is. I never had the opportunity to actually see her watching me, obviously, because I was in the car, but I've heard many accounts of people being in, the grandstands or suites or wherever it might be, and watching her, watch me compete on the racetrack. And, they said that she was always so nervous. She always told me she was so nervous. I never, obviously, never got to see any videos or pictures of that or anything, but I think she got better with it as I got into the truck and Xfinity series and the latter part of my racing career. She started to get a little more comfortable with it, but she was definitely nervous. Like I imagine a lot of parents who put their
Mhm.
kids behind the wheel. And then, so funny story. When I started racing, I used to run in It was a little pro truck division down here at New Smyrna Speedway for a number of years. And she was smack talking me for quite a while, saying she could do it and she could do it faster than me and all that stuff. So I said, okay, game on. We'll put you behind the wheel of a car for a couple laps and see how you do. So she got a fire suit. She put a helmet on. We got her in a Hans. We got her set up with a radio, and she went out for a few laps. And she did everything the exact opposite of what you're supposed to do, right? So typically faster on the straightaway and you slow for the corners. Well, she would actually gun it in the corners, and then she would come off the throttle on the straightaway. So she was faster than me as soon as he got to the corner, but I would beat her down the straightaway every single time. And then she looped it around on her last run, and we said, okay, that's it. You're done. We're going to pack it up and go home after this.
Well, I guess you could say I'm intimidated by her because she holds such a high position. And same as you, I'm a little intimidated by you, but I like you because you're a racer. And let me tell you that I did sleep okay last night, but I was struggling with how I wanted in order to do this. It was like, should I talk to Ben about the great TV numbers? Should I talk to Ben about NASCAR gaining so much right now in every way? Should I talk to him what made NASCAR lose its grip in 2006? We'll talk about those subjects in a little bit, and I would encourage everybody to listen in because I will talk to Ben one time about what happened to our sport when it fell from grace just a little bit. But I find you more intriguing. Let's start like this. I want to talk about you as a race car driver. So I looked at your stats. You're a race car driver. You raced in 17 NASCAR Xfinity races, 72 NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series, and you won Bristol in 2016. That is no joke. I want to highlight that. Bristol is where racers become racers. So you are a real race car driver, and you're a good one, not because you own NASCAR. You're simply a really good race car driver. Now, I'm not done. 26 top 10s in the NASCAR Truck Series, 1 pole in the Truck Series, 2014 Truck Series Rookie of the Year. And listen, I know I could go on and on. When I tell you that stuff, what goes through your mind right now when I tell you that you were a really good race car driver?
What goes through my mind is I should have won more races. Winning at Bristol was so special. I mean, if you could win at any track outside of Daytona for me, Bristol was up there on my list. So to be able to win there was incredibly special. It meant a lot to our team and our family and friends and everyone who all really helped get me to that place that I was in 2016. And I think for me, the challenging part about it is, I raced through 2017, which was my last year competing part-time in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. I competed kind of part of the time with GMS and then the other part of the time with RCR. And I would say those last 2 or 3 years of racing was when I finally felt like I got my feet underneath of me as a driver. My confidence started to get up. I felt more comfortable going to a lot of the tracks that I had already competed at a few times at that point. I understood the cars a lot more. It took me a while to really understand how the trucks race, just being so air dependent with the amount of downforce and side force that they had. I really loved driving the Xfinity cars because they didn't have a lot of downforce and, you could really wheel them. So, I'd say my last 2 or 3 years, I felt like I was finally getting my feet underneath me. And then I decided to hang up the fire suit for the business suit and come over to the NASCAR side of the world, the business side of the world, I should say.
Yeah.
But, it was a great career. I learned so much being a driver. I made so many great relationships. And I think what's really neat to see today is being on the company side of it, all the folks I worked with, whether they were my crew chief, my car chief, mechanics, engineers, spotters, to see where they're at. A lot of them are sitting on pit boxes of some of the best cup drivers that we have today. They were in Austin, Texas this past weekend. I think it's so neat to see some of the people that I got to work with and see them continue throughout their career and be in one of our national series today. So it was a great experience, and I would go back and do it over again every single day.
We call this Kenny Conversation because there's a thought that if you interview people, you're a professional, and you ask them the question as short as you can. Well, first of all, I'm not a professional. I'm a race car driver, and I'm going to ask the questions the way I want to ask them, even if they're long. So let me start like this when I ask you this question. My wife and myself are watching the Netflix special right now, The Crown. So it's about over there in Buckingham Palace. And, King Edward said, I don't want nothing to do with this. I fell in love with a girl. I'm leaving. You all have at it. Kind of like,
Sure.
Harry and Meghan Markle doing right now. So King George said, how dare you give me this burden? Because nobody wants to be the king of England. It's a burden. You can't live your life. I started thinking about you while I was watching this last night. And I thought to myself, did Ben really want to stay a race car driver? Or is he given this burden that he has to start his stint at running NASCAR? Because NASCAR is family owned. Now, I pretty much know you're going to lie to me, but that's okay.
Are you ready for the lie?
Yes.
You want the lie or you want the truth?
I'm having fun with you.
Yeah,
so
no, 100%.
Is it a burden? Are you okay with it? Did you struggle having to quit being a race car driver and get ready? Because we know your succession. You will be the boss after you get done with all this your stuff you're doing right now. Give me your thoughts when you said, okay, I'm going to quit racing.
So I haven't seen The Crown.
It's good.
And I don't envy being in those shoes at all. I'll have to check it out. I thought we were actually going to talk about Full Speed, but this is a good curveball. So no, I mean, at the end of the day, I had a great racing career for 11 years. I got to go to so many cool places. I got to travel a lot of tracks. I got to see the sport through a different lens, a really unique lens of being a competitor every single week. And, I took probably 2.5 months in that off season. And I looked at myself in the mirror and I said, I'm 25 years old. I'm young. I'm hungry. I want to do more. I want to be productive. I want to have a positive impact on this sport. I care about the future of this sport. And I think I can do that in a small way. And I think one of those ways is taking the leap of faith out of being a race car driver and coming to the business world. So, I spent the better part of 2 months talking to Steve O'Donnell, Brent Dewar, Steve Phelps, a number of folks, and really came up with this position that kind of naturally made sense. I raced in the truck series for the better part of a little over 3 years, and I had an opportunity to come to NASCAR and work on the truck series, in particular Brad Moran, and help kind of start gaining my leadership abilities in this world. And talk to friends and family. It was a difficult decision, and it was a little bit spur of the moment that I gave I think it was Steve O'Donnell a call on a day in the middle of January, and I said, hey, I'm coming. I'm committing to this. I'm going to hang up my fire suit full time for now, and I'm coming to NASCAR. And I was 90% there. I don't know if I was 100%, but after that call, it made it so much more real for me. And then, after my first week being on the business side of the sport, I've just never looked back. So, people ask me all the time, how much does it hurt coming to the track and not being behind the wheel of a race car? And I think you could probably say this. And I know there's a lot of drivers that have competed for a long time, and, they retire or they hang their helmet up, and, they're coming to the track as a spectator or a fan. And, you've been in those shoes. It's not easy at all.
Mm-hmm.
It is difficult to do, especially at tracks that you love to race and cars that you love to compete in. And it was difficult for a while, but, now this is the new norm for me. I haven't raced competitively since Homestead of 2017. I jumped in a late model last year, which was fun. But I'll have to find a couple races sometimes once things calm down here to do it again.
Man, that is absolutely fantastic. I like where you said you were 90%. That shows you're a real racer. I want to brag on you for a minute. I know people just like you. The great Roger Pinsky, the captain, he was a great race car driver. And
Mhm.
he got those dealerships going and he said, hey, I got to go into my business. The great Rick Hendrick, same thing. There are
Mhm.
people just like you where it's like, okay, I can drive the race car till seems like nowadays they're going to 42, whatever you want to do. But, when you're 42 years old, you go, okay, what's next? So congratulations, because I feel like you put yourself right there like a Roger Penske, a Rick Hendrick, Chip Ganassi. These were great race car drivers, and they had to take care of the business. And
Mhm.
so congratulations, Ben. Appreciate you telling me your story. Uh,
Absolutely.
yeah, good stuff. Well,
Yeah.
okay. Uh, for some of the fans, there's 30% of the fans that want me to rough you up. And then there's 70% that don't want me to rough you up. And
Bring it on.
yeah, right. Well, we're not going to do that. And we're going to talk about some of these things.
Yeah.
There's an old song. It's becoming older. And the song slows down and it says, let's get to the good part. So we're going to get to the good part right now. Uh, you talked about Full Speed at Netflix just now. I threw you a curveball with The Crown, which reminded me of the France family. So I had to
Mhm.
throw that in there. So we're 5 races in. We see attendance up. We see TV ratings up. Now I just looked at Mike Joy on X, who is the voice of NASCAR on Fox. And Mike Joy said, up is up. So right now, NASCAR is up and it's doing really, really good right now. So for me, I love NASCAR. Your family and NASCAR provided an incredible life for me, one that I'm forever grateful for. We went through some tough times, but now we're going way up quick. So, as a good engineer or a good competitor, why are we doing so good this year?
Yeah, I would say it's a plethora of things, and a lot of it I think is a momentum that's been built over the past couple of years. Whether that is the next gen car, some of the things we're doing from a schedule perspective, some of the things we're doing from a marketing standpoint. But I think if you look at the last couple of months, you mentioned Netflix Full Speed, or NASCAR Full Speed on Netflix. 88% of the people that tuned in to that first week of Netflix or NASCAR Full Speed on Netflix didn't tune into the championship race in Phoenix last season. So if you think about both, creating content and trying to build our drivers' names and brands and their personalities and being able to display that, Netflix is a great non-traditional platform for us, right? You have fans, 12% that tuned into the championship race that happen to also watch the Netflix show, but then you had a lot of people that didn't tune into that show as well. And I think we're starting to see some of the results of that. And a lot of people that tune into that first episode are watching all the way through. So I think that's been a good opportunity for us. I think the racing product has been fantastic this year. If you go back to the Atlanta race from start to finish, probably one of the more exciting races that we've seen in a really long time, one of the closest finishes in NASCAR history. I mean, I don't know about you. I don't know the last time I've seen a 3 wide finish like that, other than, maybe Talladega when they came across the line, but Talladega wasn't even that close. So, a lot of storylines and narratives that came out of that. Bristol a couple weeks ago, some great traditional short track racing. That reminded me of my racing days of being at Pensacola Speedway and Greenville Pickens, and you had to go into tire management mode, and you had some of the drivers that were competing that went out there and they blew their tires off and they saw the repercussions of that. And then you had some of the veterans that have seen what tire management means, and they saved their tires and they were there at the end of the race. So I think it's a combination of things at the end of the day. I think Netflix certainly a part of that. I would say the racing product, and then just the strong momentum that we have in this early part of the season of, all the narratives and storylines that we usually have at this point of the year. So it's been good on the ratings and viewership front. Hopefully we can keep that trend and see it through as we get into this portion of the season.
My big brother Rusty Wallace is in your NASCAR Hall of Fame. He's one of the best. He's intense. People say to me, "How do you get along with your brother Rusty so much?" And well, first of all, I love him. If it weren't for Rusty, I wouldn't be where I'm at. Sometimes people are hard to understand, but I understand my brother. And he said this to me. He said, Herman, which is my nickname, he says, "It's sad to say, but you have to remind people because people remember what they want to." So you were pretty much a baby. And respectfully, when Fox said, we're going to go against ESPN, we're going to start FS1. So there was a period of time when you were young. We had Fox, we had NBC, CBS, and now they all wanted to start their own sports company, and they wanted to go against ESPN. So Brian, your uncle, and one other executive, they came to me at Texas and they said, "Kenny, would you do NASCAR 360?" And I said, tell me about NASCAR 360.
I remember that.
Okay, NASCAR 360 is exactly what Full Speed is right now. NASCAR 360 took me from here to here. And I said, "Why are we doing this?" And they said, "We want everybody to know what these individuals are about." So my point is this. We're just repeating our history. Somewhere in there, we got lost. And when Full Speed come up, I'm like, well, we did this.
Yep.
Did we lose our way a little bit and then have to go back and grab Full Speed from Netflix?
Yeah, it's a good question. And, I remember watching as a kid, I think it was on Speed Channel back in the day.
It was
NASCAR
awesome.
360. It was
saved
great.
my career. It saved my career.
It was amazing. And to your point, it's exactly what Netflix Full Speed is. It's a different production company. It's different people. It's different drivers. It's a different distribution channel. But it's very similar to what we did a little over a decade ago. And, it is a huge opportunity for us to tell the stories and share the personalities of a lot of the up and coming drivers that we have today. And, I think if you think back, let's say a decade ago, 2014, 2015, right, you had a lot of big names in the sport that were still competing: Jimmy Johnson, Danica Patrick, Dale Earnhardt Jr., Jeff Gordon. And over the course of 4 or 5 years, all of those drivers retired. They had huge followings. Some of them were on NASCAR 360 back in the day. Some of them just naturally built their names and their brands. And, I think a little bit of that was probably a result of, the 2005, 2006 kind of peak that we saw as a sport. And I think since, those drivers have retired, we have a crop of new drivers that have a ton of talent. They have a ton of energy. They have a lot of passion, and they have some personality as well. And we have to find a way to somehow, tell those stories of those up and coming drivers in a way that is both on the track, but off the track. And I think one of the unique things about our sport that you could argue is a little bit of a competitive disadvantage to other sports is we're very unique in the sense of, you don't have that hometown pride necessarily. I think of being here in Daytona Beach, Florida, people cheer for the Jacksonville Jaguars and they cheer for the Gators and they cheer for UCF. And it's a little more difficult for a non-fan to associate themselves with, hey, I'm going to cheer for this guy on Sunday and tune in and watch every single week. So what do we have? We have their personalities, we have their names, we have their brands. And, I think creating something like we did with Full Speed gives us the opportunity and a platform for the drivers to, get in front of millions of people and show themselves a little bit, show who they are, show what they represent. And, that hopefully will give people a hook to be able to say that, I like this driver. I'm going to be a Christopher Bell fan. I'm going to be a Bubba Wallace fan. I'm going to be, a Joey Logano fan because, I like them. I associate with them. I have things that we have in common with each other. And, that really creates fandom at the end of the day. It's something that we talk a lot about internally at NASCAR, and I think star power and creating big names and names that people can associate themselves with is a huge opportunity for us as we think about the future, for sure.
Yeah, well said. And basically, you just said we have to create these superstars all over again. Listen, I don't want your job because when you really put it that way, accidentally, Bill Elliott would say, Herman, it's all about timing and circumstances. And here, all of a sudden, your most popular, your greatest drivers within a couple of years of each other, they retired. That would be hard on any sport. You look at Michael Jordan or Tiger Woods, when they quit their sport, it's hard on those sports. So I don't want your job. However, I want to help. So I really like this William Byron kid. He wins the Daytona 500. He wins Texas. I have him on Kenny Conversation about 3 weeks ago. And my analytics, myself and Charlie Marlowe were like, nobody's paying attention to William. And it really bothered me. I'm like, I was getting way more views on like an Elliott Sadler. So then all of a sudden I was real happy to see that you all are building this new building, I believe in Concord, North Carolina. So is this part of the process at NASCAR for you to get these drivers out in America, for people to know who they are? Because they are really good drivers.
Yeah, to your point, Kenny, they're great drivers. They're probably some of the best drivers that we may have had in the history of our sport. And we've got to find a way to tell those stories. So as you were mentioning, we've finished building a building that's right next to our R&D center up in Concord, North Carolina, our NASCAR Productions building. We probably need to come up with a more creative name than that, something a little more fun. But we call it our NASCAR Productions building up there. But it has a handful of studios. It has podcast rooms in it, a bunch of control rooms. And, that's going to be the hub for every bit of content that is coming out on social and digital platforms. We'll be doing a little bit of live production from there, not a ton, but, having it there in Concord, North Carolina was strategically placed to be close to a lot of the teams and drivers, right? If there's a driver, whether it's a cup driver, Xfinity driver, a truck driver, an ARCA driver that wants to come down and shoot content with us, unveil a new paint scheme, announce a new partner, we wanted to create this as a hub to be able to both, create content, but then also distribute content and produce it too. So we're really excited about the building. I mean, we're only skinning the surface for what it can really do and what the capabilities are. We're bringing on some new people to help lead a lot of the content creation as well. And, we really think it's a future, right? People are consuming content more than they ever have. They're consuming it in very different ways than they did 20 years ago. And we've got to be on the forefront of that, right? Whether it's live content and people tuning in, this weekend to Fox Sports 1 for a live race, or on Instagram, on X, on Facebook, TikTok, we've got to meet all of our fans and non-fans where they're at today, and we got to do that through content. So it's a huge opportunity for us. It's a huge green space. I'm really excited about that building and what's going to do. And like I said, we are just learning some of the capabilities of it. I think it's only going to scale up from here.
I am 60 years old, and I worked. I was a race car driver. I ran 905 NASCAR races. And I would get out of the NASCAR Cup car. I'm driving for Furniture Row, helping them get their new team started. And I would get out of the race at Dover, 500 lap race, and I would immediately be in my fire suit and jump on the Speed TV set or FS1 set. So when social media first started, I'll tell you my story later. It's a really, really good story on why I was the first to social media. It helped me acquire sponsorship to run the NASCAR Xfinity race. But I knew this before anybody. And I had people making fun of me because I was on X and I was on Facebook. And I'm like, keep laughing, buddy. Now it's come my way. So last week in Bristol, I took a picture of the person in charge of social media at Fox and Bob Pockras.
Mhm.
And the caption was, they made fun of us back then, not anymore. So, I'm always honest on here. So Steve Craddock, my boss, says, remind me, who made fun of you? And I want to say, you did, Steve. But
Yep.
in your defense, now follow my timeline. All the famous drivers retire. And we have this unbelievable rippling effect of this new digital era. How to go about this. I mean, you had this perfect storm. Those times, how do I deal with social media? Because all they do is argue on social media. You had to figure out how to turn that into a positive. And I did. And I see you all doing it now. This was a lot for you to handle.
Yeah, it was for sure. And I mean, to your point, you were a pioneer of social media in the NASCAR world as it started to come on, a little over 10 years ago or so. And that's now paying dividends. And, we've got to do it certainly, as a sanctioning body and as a sport, but it's also the responsibility of teams and drivers and the rest of the industry to get on social media, engage with fans, because, I think it's a great platform to have one-to-one relationships with people, and really be able to tell their story, answer questions, do Q&As, put videos like this podcast on it, and do all sorts of things. So, it's something we've obviously focused on a lot in Charlotte. It's something we're going to focus on a lot with the production center, and something that, we talk about this driver ambassador program as another example of it. How do we find ways to get drivers really excited about not only, going on and doing late night shows and, TV hits and radio interviews, but also, social and digital content and engaging with a lot of the fans through that.
So I just remembered who was behind me the whole time. I had one person call me and say, man, this is incredible what you're doing. You're sharing videos inside your shop. And it was Paul Brooks at NASCAR at that time.
Right.
Paul was brilliant at that time. So, and I don't know what he's up to now. I see him on Instagram over in Italy with his kids. And I like that.
Yeah.
Have you thought of an alumni? I go down here to Busch Stadium and I see, everybody loves your past. Everybody loves, Rusty Wallace or Bill Elliott or Jimmy Johnson. Have you thought of maybe giving these guys a polo shirt with their name on it, alumni, a different type of hard cards where this alumni can come to the racetrack, hang out, and the fans go, oh, look, there's Bill Elliott. Have you thought about an alumni?
We have. We're working on an alumni program right now, actually.
Well, I'll be darned. Very cool.
Yeah, the timing is impeccable here, but we've been working on it for the past several months. And I mean, I know a handful of drivers that were competing in the Cup Series and retired, and they kind of left the sport or distanced themselves a little bit. And I think part of that was just, hey, what is my role and how can I be helpful, and why should I come to a racetrack? I'll say myself, it's difficult to come to a racetrack when you don't have anything to do. When you're a fan there and you're watching the race, I enjoy it. I love it. But if I'm coming in a professional role, I actually want to be productive and to be valuable at the end of the day. And I think that's where a lot of drivers' heads are at. So we're working on an alumni program. I don't have all the details around it. We're still fine tuning it, but I think it'll be a neat program, not only to get, a lot of our alumni drivers out to the racetrack and, have them come and bring their friends and family and enjoy a weekend, but then also, opportunities for our fans to go and see them, put them on a stage for a pre-race or out in the midway or fan zone. So, we're kind of crafting what exactly that's going to look like, but I think to your point, exactly, like we've got to focus on, building the names that we have today, but then also finding a way to celebrate our history and our roots and what really got us to where we're at. And a lot of that are the drivers that competed for a number of years. So I'm excited about it. I'm excited about us kind of putting the fine tooth comb to it and sharing more on it, but it's going to be a neat program from what I've seen.
might I add that some of these great drivers, they get embarrassed, but they do have egos. I think you should put their name on a polo shirt with NASCAR on the other side. NASCAR here, Bill Elliott's name here.
I like that.
Okay, and ask them, say, would you please wear your championship ring? And here's why I say this, Ben. It's a generation gap. Some of these people like me, I decided to let my hair go gray. I was dyeing it for TV. But sometimes, a kid's 25 years old and he's like, who's that? But he sees the name. Oh my God, look, that's Rusty Wallace. When I was born, I heard of him, but I didn't know really what he looked like. So I think it would be cool if, you made some polos for these great drivers, NASCAR logo here, their name over here.
Love it.
Okay, let's change.
I think that'd be great.
Yeah, so do I. I think it's awesome.
We'll put it in the hopper for sure. That's a good one.
Yeah. Well, you listen. It's like I said. I'm not kissing your ass. I love NASCAR. You guys, I made a lot of money in NASCAR, and you guys, I love this sport. I can only talk bad about it so much, and it's not fun, to talk about a tough situation. In the end, I love NASCAR. I remember seeing, listen, I'm at the age where, and I hate to say this, but I got to say this. I remember seeing Big Bill on the back straightaway in his dying days in a wheelchair with eating a hot dog with a little bit of mustard right here. That's how much I love NASCAR. And I remember the man, your great grandfather that started it. So for the people that want me to talk crap about NASCAR, they can go swat flies. I will when it's a situation.
Sure. Yeah.
All right. So
and we all need to do that every now and then, right? I mean, we're all humans at the end of the day. NASCAR as a sport or as an LLC isn't going to be perfect. We're going to make decisions that are going to move the sport in a good direction. We're going to make decisions that sometimes may not make sense, and we're going to mess up. And that's a part of us all being human and learning from it. But we gotta make the best decisions we can. I've actually been rereading the book on Bill Sr. It's called Big Bill, and it retells a lot of those stories of him growing up, through the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. And there's some of the coolest stories that you'd ever hear from, starting, building a track at Daytona National Speedway or Talladega, up into the 80s and 90s when Bill Jr. got involved. But Bill Sr. was still around, I imagine, around the time that you probably saw him at the racetrack. And I would have loved to see him and Annie B and just, them being involved, or even just walking through the garage area back in the day. I can imagine it's so special.
And now I got to go one more before we go. I got some stuff here, but
yeah.
So your grandpa, Bill France Jr. I guess I'm right. I mess up sometimes, but anyway.
Yes.
We're at a softball tournament, I think in Watkins Glen, and he'd smoke and he'd have a beer, and he was such a badass. And get up here in our trailer, and he'd chew your butt out, and it was a different way of governing back then. But we're at a softball game, and he looked at me, and I'm looking at you right now. I'm like, oh my gosh, get over here. And I sit at the picnic table with him, and he's smoking, takes a drink of beer, your mom's dad, right? So I will never forget that. At 60, I'm excited to tell you these stories because you're only 32 years old. So anyway, just, my love for NASCAR. And like I said, I can only rough it up so much. So, all right, here we go. I'm all over social media when I'm not doing anything, but I'm very busy. So I was on X yesterday or 2 days ago, and I asked this. I like X because you can take polls and it's quick communication. Facebook has its place. TikTok has its place. I like Snapchat. But anyway, I took this poll and it got 5,292 votes in one day. That's a lot of people.
That's strong.
Think about 5,200 people at Bowman Gray. That's a lot of people. Okay, and my question was this. Does NASCAR race too much? 73% of the people said no, they don't race too much. 27% of the people said yes, they race too much. Okay, now hold on. Right behind it, I asked another crazy question. Now, that was a good question, the one I asked, but I said this. Has talking bad about NASCAR become a sport? And then I said, in other words, is it what people do for fun? Are we in a society where talking bad on social media, is it a sport? Is it fun? 69% of the people said, yes, it's a sport. People get enjoyment out of talking bad, even though they're watching the whole race. 31% of the people said no. What I have learned, Ben, is that 70% of the people, no matter what, love NASCAR. This is my figures. 30% of the people are just there to create negativity.
Sure.
What are your thoughts on all that? Do you
know
that?
Well, I haven't seen that poll, so I'll have to
But
go
does
back.
NASCAR know that? Have you ever talked about dealing with the people that are just there because it's a sport?
No,
talk
I mean,
bad.
not necessarily, and I appreciate and I respect criticism at the end of the day, and constructive criticism. I'm not a big believer in people talking bad just to talk bad, or try to create conspiracy theories or whatever it might be. But at the end of the day, if you have feedback, I've always said, give us and myself, if it's on X or whatever it might be, give us honest feedback. And I get a
Right.
lot of that. And some of it is really helpful and really constructive. So that's always been, kind of my personal opinion on it at the end of the day. And, you know, I think we have an opportunity to go and kind of, sometimes tell our version of the story or why we're making certain decisions. And, there are a lot of things that I would love to sit here on your podcast, Kenny, and tell you, hey, this is a reason why we did X, this is a reason why we did Y, and this is a reason why we did Z. And sometimes we just naturally can't. Sometimes we can, though. And I think using platforms like this and platforms like X and others to be able to explain kind of the rationale behind some of our decisions, is helpful in some scenarios. Sometimes we make a decision, everyone's like, I like that. That's a big W, mark a W next to it. There are a lot of decisions that people may not agree with, but that's all part of our human nature at the end of the day, right? We all have
Yeah.
different backgrounds, we have different perspectives, we have different thoughts on how things should be run, or how the sport, what the direction of the sport should go in. And I think that's the beauty of it at the end of the day. And I love hearing people's opinions, and whether it's positive or negative. And I've always said that if you're going to have an opinion, put a little bit of thought to it, and please be constructive as you bring it to us, and we'll
Yes.
definitely take it into consideration.
Yes, 100%. I agree with that. Don't go, I hate NASCAR. That's one of my characters I play. I hate NASCAR. But they watched the race. So anyway, that is not mature to create a conversation with you about that, because we hear them, we see them. But okay, this is a question. Now look, I stressed over talking to you.
You have a lot of notes there. That's impressive.
I do this. This is Kenny Conversation. This is the real me.
That's great.
Kenny Wallace show is where I give my opinion, and I animate a little bit there.
Yep.
So
Yep.
there are, there's coffee with Kenny, which is me getting out of bed, and that found its place. And then,
I've watched a few of those along the way. Those are great. Love it.
I had to grow up a little bit too, So, but and then there's like I said, the Kenny Wallace show is my opinion. Kenny Conversation is this right here. I would say this is more me. I couldn't have won 9 Xfinity races acting like a nut. So we all have to settle down at times. So this is where I want to go with this one. I really feel like this is the only time I'm roughing you up. And it's not even roughing you up. So I believe 2006 was the height of NASCAR. That was like the granddaddy of them all. Like, 2006 was when we're 400,000 people in the grandstands at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. We're 200,000 people at the Daytona 500. Now, one would have thought that NASCAR would have went downhill after the death of our beloved and great Dale Sr., who was so good to me. Just had to add that in there. Senior was good to me. He let me drive his car to get started in NASCAR. So here's the tough question for me. But somebody on X asked it, but I already had it wrote down. In your opinion, and I have my opinion, what caused the societal downward shift in NASCAR? What caused, now that we look back at it, it's been a long time.
Sure.
What caused that,
Right.
for things to just go bad?
Yeah, I remember it. 2005, 2006. It was the peak of NASCAR as a sport, and hopefully we'll get back to those days again.
We will.
I remember the 2-year wait lists on some of the racetracks. I mean, over 100,000 people that would come to a race every single week, no matter where we raced. It was unbelievable. I think there are a handful of things that contributed to kind of the downward slope that we had. I would say probably 07, 08, really until 2018. I would say is where we kind of hit our floor. And then I think we started to see some flattening and some growth in the past couple of years, which is great. But I would attribute it to a couple of different things. One is the financial crisis of 08. Right. If you think about a lot of our fans travel to the racetrack on the weekend. They'd bring their friends and their family. They would fly sometimes. Some of them would camp in an RV. It's not just the cost of buying the ticket, it's the cost of actually traveling and going to a race. It wasn't inexpensive for a lot of people, back in the day. So I would say that, along with a lot of our fans being true blue collar workers, and Jim, has said this before. If you think about our core fan base, it is and has been and probably will continue to be a lot of our blue collar fans. And I think they were hit particularly hard during the financial crisis of 08. And we started kind of this slow downward decline after that. And we talked about some of these other things. You had a lot of big name drivers that retired year after year. And you saw ratings and viewership, like clear metrics, fan attendance, relevance, everything that we were looking at was continuing to decline. And you could attribute it to a Dale Jr. not being in the car for that weekend, or Jeff Gordon not being in the car for that weekend. So I think that was a part of it. And then I would say the other component is just, and this kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier around the productions, building, and content, is in 2006, our biggest competitors were other sports leagues, right? It was the NFL and the NBA and NHL. And in a lot of ways, they still are all of our competitors today. But our competitors are also just, frankly, anyone that is making content. People watching YouTube videos, people watching Netflix, people watching, videos or pictures on Instagram or X. Content is everywhere today. And, we're competing against that for our fans' attention, for people's attention, for potential partners' attention. And it's a completely different world from where we were almost 2 decades ago. So I think there's a handful of things. Those are the 3 biggest that come to my mind. But it, is definitely a bit of a downward, kind of spiral that we had for a little bit. And I think ever since 2018 and 2019, and a lot of the changes that we've had in the sport, it's now finally, starting to come back and getting a good spot, to what we talked about from a ratings and viewership perspective. So we've got to continue that momentum and somehow get it back to the days that you were talking about of, walking into a Bristol or a Dover or Kansas or Richmond and being sold out, with hundreds of thousands of people, and we're slowly chipping away at it and getting there. So I'm bullish on the future of the sport. Certainly, it's there's a lot of learnings that we've had over the past 20 years or so.
I want to say that I remember 2008 clearly. I took my NASCAR money that people make fun of me about. I saved a lot of money, and I specifically bought a lot of real estate, and I did good with it. and here I am. But I remember 2008 where the banks loan. I'm saying this because I want to remind everybody watching. It's not your job to do this, but in 2008, the downward spiral in the economy was the banks loaned everybody money, and they loaned anybody money, and they had too much money lent out, and they had to call those loans back in. So they wanted them to just pay the whole damn loan back off. And America went spiraling down. So America, our country, went crash landing. And we were all along for the ride. Google it if you're watching this right now. So, yes, that was an extremely tough time. Yes, I'm glad
Yeah.
you brought that up. So let's have a little fun now. You've answered the tough questions, and I want to thank you. Obviously, like old Larry McReynolds says, I can beat this like a dead horse. I can rough you up till the cows come in. But let's have some fun now because you've answered the tough stuff in a good way. Who is your best friend at NASCAR? You're a young man, but you're smart. You're mature. You know kids age so quickly now because I always tease that it's the steroids in the chicken nuggets. It seems like somebody like you, you're so mature. Who is your best friend at NASCAR? Who's the one you go to and go, hey man, let's go to lunch?
That's a good question. I would say a lot of the folks on my team probably are. So I've got a great team. So I have scheduling that goes into me. So Jason Hamilton has helped lead a lot of those initiatives. Joey Denowitz has come on board, and he's got a lot of experience running short tracks with Track Enterprises. Was at Spire, so he has a little bit of a race team side to it too, and he's come on and run regional. And then I've design development into me as well with Derek Muldowney. So I would really say it's my team. It's also a lot of the folks that I spend a good amount of time around. And I spend a good amount of time around Steve Phelps and Steve O'Donnell. They've been, great mentors, great leaders. They have more experience in this building than just about anyone else, and they've seen NASCAR through the really bad times that we just talked about, and they've seen NASCAR through the good times. So being able to lend an ear onto them is always invaluable. And then I would say, frankly, my mom Lisa and Jim. Jim has seen this, and he grew up literally as his father, Bill France Sr., was building NASCAR in the 1940s and 50s. He got to see it, through those days. He ran IMSA for a number of years on the sports car side, and he's running it today. So he has a tremendous amount of experience. And then, obviously, my mom is a good sounding board as well. She grew up, I would say, a little more on the track side with International Speedway Corporation. So, anything that we're talking about that's related to schedule or entering new markets. She was a big part of us racing in Kansas Speedway and Chicagoland and, Fontana, Michigan, a handful of tracks that we race at today that are, pivotal parts of our schedule. She helped make and come together. So I think it's neat to be able to have a responsibility that in a lot of ways aligned with what she grew up doing and what she led on the ISC side of the company. So, there are a ton of people that I get to bounce ideas off of, and for me, that's priceless at the end of the day.
And one more fun question in a fun way. I'm not going to use all these important words. I think I know the answer, but who is the grand poobah? I mean, who is it Jim? Is Jim France like the man in a fun way? I'm not cornering you. Yeah. I mean, like for me, family wise, it seemed like he would be, but
right.
But I don't know.
Yeah, I would say, the grand poopah, as you said it would probably be Jim at the end of the day, right? He's the CEO of the company. He is at the top of the totem pole. And him and Lisa, they both have very big voices in the company because, in a lot of ways they are the company. When I say NASCAR LLC,
Yeah.
Steve Phelps obviously is another big leader. I would say is much more involved in a lot of the day-to-day decisions.
Yeah.
Right, there are certain decisions that level up to a board level for a recommendation and decisions. There are a lot of day-to-day decisions that Steve Phelps and Steve O'Donnell are also making along the way. So I'd say the grand poobah and the grand boss probably Jim at the end of the day, but
Yeah.
there are a lot of leaders in NASCAR as a company at the end of the day.
I'm going to call an audible here and have fun with me. You're a businessman. Is it hard to call your mom Lessa? Or do you want to say mom? Do you want to say mom sometimes, but you got to say Lessa?
So I'm working on this, Kenny. If you have any advice, please let me know because I haven't figured this one out. So when I came on, it was probably 2 years or so in. We went through this merger and integration, right? You had International Speedway, the tracks, you had NASCAR. It all kind of came together. As a part of that, we did, I guess, similar to NASCAR 360, but very different at the same time. We did what we call 360s. So we did it for a number of different people in the company. And one of the things that I got as feedback from the person that I was working with is trying to understand and delineate when to call your mom and when to call her Lisa at the end of the day.
Got it.
And what I've defaulted to is if it's a story that I'm telling or a personal setting, it's always mom.
Wow.
If it's
Yeah.
a business setting, I typically go to Lisa. So I haven't perfected it by any means. If anyone has any advice
I
on that,
love
or
it.
has been in that situation, let me know. But it was good advice that I had from a coworker of mine
Yeah.
that got back to me, and now I try to be more thoughtful about it when I say it.
I think it's very heartfelt, and I really appreciate you answering that. And I gotta settle up something on my part. I only went 1 through 12. I did not go to. You were a 2014 college graduate with the University of Florida with a degree in sports management. So you're way smarter than me. I went 1 through 12. So your mother's name is spelled Lesa. Is that correct?
Lesa, yes,
But you call her Lisa.
Lisa. Yep.
So it's still Lisa, even though it's Lesa.
Even though it's Lesa, a lot of people spell it Lisa, obviously, but she's always gone by Lisa. So I guess I've always called it Lisa. Maybe there's
Yeah.
a better pronunciation for
Stop
it
it.
that she hasn't used, but
She's a badass. I'm still afraid of her.
she is.
One day I'll walk up to her. But okay, we're getting towards the end here. Um, People say, "Why do you always tell your guests you're getting to the end?" I said, "Because I want them to know." Tony Stewart would say, and Kevin Harvick, they're like, "I don't want this to end. This is fun." Um,
This is a good time.
yeah,
I'm
right.
enjoying it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
This is
I
probably the most lighthearted part of my day. So we could just go till the end of the day if you want. I could
yes.
move
Well,
on my meetings.
we won't, we won't. But I listen very well, even though people think I don't. They had me on Ritalin when I was a kid because I really was diagnosed hyperactive, but I'm getting better. I'm getting to where I can listen now. So you mentioned your mother uh, being an integral part of scheduling. So we were at Chicagoland. Well, we had Joliet.
Sure.
Then we went out to Chicagoland. So we were at 2 Chicago tracks. And everybody forgets the one. I'll never forget the one that Kyle Busch won at when he was 15 years old. Then we had to make the age. It's like, no, you won 2. So we went to that track. Then we went to the beautiful Chicagoland. And now we're into the city of Chicago. What was the thought process on creating a street course in Chicago, in the city?
Yeah, I think it was a handful of things. We had run Chicagoland for the better part of, I guess, almost 2 decades at that point. We took a break during COVID and then haven't had the opportunity to go back since. But for the Chicago street course, it is really an opportunity for us to do something new, unique, different, novel in a lot of ways, right? We had never had a street course in our sport's 75-year history, but an opportunity to bring NASCAR racing to a lot of people. right? So if you think about a lot of the places that we race at today, fans will travel great distances to make to those racetracks. And a lot of them aren't necessarily in an urban or metropolitan area. So it's a little bit different from that perspective in the sense that not only we're bringing the race literally to people, but we were bringing it to fans that may have gone to Chicagoland from when we were racing there. But we also brought a lot of new fans. So, more than 4 out of 5 people that walked through those gates on the very rainy Sunday had never been to a NASCAR race before, and that was their very first experience of going to a NASCAR race. And a lot of those people continue to consume and engage with NASCAR today. So, I think it was an opportunity to do that. Obviously, being on Big NBC on that weekend was another big part of it, and showcasing, NASCAR racing in a different light in the city of downtown Chicago. And there's a handful of other things, but it was a really bold and audacious goal that we had. I could tell you the
Perfectly
first,
said.
yeah, the first times that I mentioned it in the room, I almost got laughed out of the room the first couple of times. They said, "You want to do what?" And we're actually going to be able to do this.
Yeah.
And then we did the virtual race, and then one thing led to another. We were able to actually make the real race happen last year. And we're going to come back this year, and I can tell you it is not going to be raining at all this time when we
That's
come on
right.
July 6th and 7th, because we've already got the rain out of the way with Daytona 500. Daytona 500 and Clash, we had our rain, so it's going to be bright, beautiful, and sunny on July 6th and 7th this year.
Positive mental attitude. So, with that said, I just want to add something. My brother Mike said something to me. He goes, "You know what happens when you don't promote?" And there's silence, right? Do you know what happens when you don't promote? Nothing. Barnum Bailey. So years ago, Barnum Bailey, they had the Great Circus Act. To this day, I thought a lot about you in Chicago. I've heard you loud and clear. That was an extremely expensive race for you to put on. However, we all know that Chicago, the city of Chicago, is massive amount of people. We know that.
Sure.
We know that the suburbs of Illinois, it's just farmland, which is awesome. We love the farmers. But in the Kenny Wallace term, I think when you went in the city, you just kind of like, they had to pay attention to you because you was right there in their face. And I think of Barnum Bailey because, you promoted the sport. And I might add, I know I'm long-winded. I want to say this. Because of SVG, Shane Van Gisbergen, one of the greatest NASCAR races of all time, him coming from the back and running over that puddle of water, where it was. That puddle of water was there. And I'm a race car driver. I'm like, it was a hell of a race.
It was.
So everything I just said, you went downtown. It was a hell of a race. The skyline was in the background. I thought it came off quite well, even though it was expensive.
It was. It wasn't a inexpensive endeavor, that is for sure. But to your point, I mean, it was a great opportunity to get in front of new people that came to the event, that tuned in on TV. And for the people that either came or tuned in on TV, outside of, granted, there are some things that we need to work on for Saturday and Sunday, but they got to see an amazing race. And they got to see SVG, which was a bit unprecedented, come and win that race. And it was one of the most talked about things that we had on social media last year, was SVG winning that race. So it created a lot of narratives, a lot of storylines. It was an exciting event. A lot of learnings that we frankly had because we had never done anything like that before, right? If you think about our experience operating tracks, it's brick and mortar, it's permanent built facilities, it's a Kansas, it's a Phoenix, it's a Daytona, it's a Homestead Miami Speedway. This was 100% temporary. We were closing down roads, we were building temporary structures, we were pouring concrete walls inside of downtown Chicago, we were putting up fences, all sorts of things that we don't traditionally do. And we had a lot of folks involved on our side. We had a lot of conversations, obviously, with the city folks, and for it to come out the way that it did last year, rain aside, it was a really neat event, and something that I think the company and the sport can be proud of. I mean, the industry really, teams, drivers, everyone came around that event in a special way too.
So, in that same realm, like a day or two after the Netflix series Full Speed, after Full Speed, we saw a gain, a positive 260,000 on Instagram, 41,000 on Facebook, 20,000 on X, like a day or two after the Full Speed. I feel like you're just doing a really good job of promoting the sport right now with Full Speed, with getting in people's faces that you normally wouldn't with Chicago. I just wanted to say that.
Yeah.
Really not a question, but your thought on that, I guess.
Yeah, no, I think it's great. And Chicago was an investment for us, and I think a lot of ways it paid great dividends. And Full Speed was an investment for us as well. We brought in Words and Pictures to come in and produce it, and Netflix was a great partner, and put it on their platform, which was massive. So the numbers that you just rattled off are real numbers. Part of that is probably Daytona 500. Part of that and some of the other storylines that we've had, but I would say a big part of that is also Full Speed and creating some really good content that people can tune in and watch, and hopefully gets them to either follow NASCAR even closer than they already do today, or say, hey, maybe we should think about tuning in this weekend to Fox or FS1, or maybe we should think about it's coming to Charlotte in a couple weeks, and I live in the Charlotte area. I want to go see what it's all about. I'm going to come to the Coke 600. And just to put that grain of thought into their head that they'll now consider consuming NASCAR coming out to an event is what we're all hoping for at the end of the day, right? We want to bring new fans into the fold, and we want to create a really great experience and a really great racing product for everyone that follows us, and really create something that they can all be proud of. So, it's good to hear those numbers. Actually, I haven't heard those numbers before, but we got to keep this momentum going for sure.
Yeah, that David Stern guy. He's new to the sport. I say new to the sport. He's not new, but he's quality and he's good for everybody. Just a comment. At night, my wife will be on her computer playing games, and I'll be laughing and laughing. I laugh so hard. My wife says, "What are you laughing at?" I said, "These reels on Instagram." I get the point I'm trying to make is NASCAR gained 260,000 on Instagram. Dale Earnhardt Jr. is a dear friend of mine. We talk. And he said to me about 3 years ago, and Dale Jr., he'll hear about this. We talk to each other. And he says, man, Instagram is quality. That's what all our analytics say. There's a lot of fighting on X. Everybody likes to fight, and Facebook. But that Instagram, and I know TikTok's the big deal right now for the kids. I get all that. But it seems to me that Instagram is where quality is. And I wanted to give you an attaboy because 260,000, to me, this is me saying this, Instagram is the quality site. Out of all social media, that's where the quality people are, the ones that don't throw trash in your face all the time. So good job on that game. That's a big one. And to end, this is where just a little bit of fun right now. I'm going to go into character. I'm going to do the Kenny Wallace show for a minute, okay? Ben Kennedy better not ruin Bowman Gray. He better not ruin my racetrack. So that was my character because that's what they say. Yes. NASCAR, it was your decision. I guess you're going to run Bowman Gray. Little Birdie says that the city has been saying, somebody take this over. I don't know if I'm right or wrong. Comment on Bowman Gray.
Yeah, so we announced Thursday last week that we're going to take over the entity that will have the lease of Bowman Gray, and be operating it. So our first race is April 20th. It is less than a month away, so we have a lot of work to do. We brought on Austin Shuford A great person. He's he's helped promote a number of races at Nashville Fairgrounds. He's been involved with Milwaukee and Knoxville
Mm.
truck races through Track Enterprises. He's going to be a great leader for that track. And if you spend some time with him, he is a true short track person. He loves short track, and it's in his blood and his DNA for sure. So excited about that. But as we started having these conversations and getting back to who is the boss, as we mentioned this to the boss, one of the first things that Jim asked us to do and told us to do was make sure that you keep what makes Bowman Gray Stadium. And a big part of that, it's a racing product. It's the entertainment that's on the track. It's frankly a little bit of entertainment and what happens off the track. And it's a way that Greg Garrison and his family have operated that track for decades, and his family has. And this is a partnership that goes back to, we talked about a little bit some of the early days of NASCAR. This is a partnership that Jim remembers that he and his dad had with the Hawkins family back in the late 1940s, as early as 1949. All the way up to the Cup Series racing in the 1950s through the 1970s. And we're still running there with NASCAR weekly and modified races. So it's an important relationship. It's an important partnership. We actually had someone with the last name of Hawkins there when we signed the papers on Wednesday, which was so special. But getting back to my point, Jim told us, and as soon as we started talking about this, is do not mess up this racetrack, whatever you do. And that is our goal and our focus is, we want to keep what the DNA of Bowman Gray is, because that makes it so unique. It makes it so special. And we're going to keep Greg Garrison and some of the family members involved for the next couple of years. They're going to be with us for probably every race this year. They'll be out there this year working with Austin and the team. So, excited to take about a lot of those learnings and experiences that they have, because they know every nook and cranny of that place. They know what makes it work. They have a lot of relationships that are invaluable, and we've got to keep and protect that. So that is our focus on Bowman Gray. Obviously, we got to get our feet underneath of us, and Austin's gonna be a good person, but we're excited to get racing. April 20th can't come soon enough.
Local racing. Is it true? I was listening to Chocolate Myers on the what is it, NASCAR Channel 90 on Sirius XM. He said that and this is where I'm only 60. I need to be about 80 to remember this, I think. But did NASCAR run 6 points races a year there back in the day?
I'd have to go back and double check. It was several. I don't know if it was exactly 6, but it was several.
Yeah.
I want to say they started in 1956. We went through, I believe, 71 there with the Cup Series.
Wow, 71 points races.
Or sorry, 1971, I should say.
Okay.
I don't know exactly how many points races we had, but we had the Cup Series there for a number of years. And then we actually had the Convertible Series there. I want to say it started in 1957, and that was there for several years. Convertible Series was huge back in the day too. So, and then if you rewind the clock another decade, the first year of NASCAR racing, and people forget this, it wasn't predominantly stock cars. It was modifieds. Our first couple of years was really modified racing. And, for the better part of that first decade at Bowman Gray, it was predominantly modifieds. It was modifieds before we actually brought the NASCAR Grand National Series in the late 1950s.
I remember.
So, yep. Yeah, exactly. And we handed out our a trophy at New Smyrna Speedway last year for the modified race. It was pretty neat. So it was 75 years to the day we handed out the trophy at New Smyrna Speedway. Was 75 years before we handed out the very first trophy for a modified race on the beaches of Daytona. So it reminds you about how big modified racing is, from our roots and where we began. But if you go to Bowman Gray on any Saturday night, it's one of the biggest races of the night. And there's a reason for that.
I sure do wish they would have never got rid of Madhouse on History Channel. On the History Channel, Madhouse, I have no idea why that series ended. It was the greatest. And one last thing real quick. When I think of NASCAR, I was the keynote speaker at the Illinois Stock Car Hall of Fame this year. Soldiers Field. So a lot of your NASCAR tracks, listen to me talk to you, but some of the NASCAR tracks back in those days were like Soldiers Field, Bowman Gray. These were like racetracks around football fields. So it's really the way you all started.
It is, yeah. In a lot of ways, it is. And people have talked about the Coliseum for the past couple of years, and
Yeah.
in some ways, look, it's a completely different event. It's in a different
Yeah.
market. It's in downtown LA, but in a lot of ways, it's a little bit, making a nod back to our history and where we began. Because if you overlay the Coliseum on top of Bowman Gray or Soldier Field, for that matter, back in the day, they are almost identical tracks to each other. So stadium racing was a thing, back in the day. And if you go back even further, and I love looking at some of the old photos of this, the old wooden tracks of,
Yeah, board tracks.
the board
Scary.
tracks, over 40 degrees of banking. It's just
Crazy.
wild. And we've raced all sorts of, different track types, throughout our history, whether it's a NASCAR or outside of NASCAR. And I geek out in some of the history, and I think Bowman Gray for us in a lot of ways, and to what you were mentioning, is a little bit of a homecoming in that sense.
Yeah. Well, here we are, Ben. Listen, you went downtown LA, smart move. You went downtown Chicago, smart move. Might have been expensive, but Barnum Bailey, what do you do if you don't promote? What happens? Nothing.
Yep.
I can guarantee you, downtown LA and downtown Chicago, they know who NASCAR is now. So I just had to say that. And listen, everybody, we are on podcast. Everybody says, why is this not in podcast form? It is. And you can listen to Ben Kennedy on your way to work. And it's so long that you can listen to him on the way back home. And you can do it over and over as many times as you want. We are in iTunes and we are in podcasts. So Ben, listen, I know what's going to happen. They're going to say, why didn't you ask him this? Why didn't you ask him that? Listen, my friends, it's been an hour and 18 minutes. I can't tell the complete NASCAR story, but subscribe right here, respond, and
We'll do this again sometime.
Part 2 is coming soon, right? Ben,
Exactly.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kenny. I appreciate it. Really enjoyed it today. Always appreciate the time and appreciate what you do for the sport.
Thank you. And remember, everybody, we have Danica Patrick coming up, Kyle Busch. We have some real popular people coming through the pipeline. Maybe not as popular as Ben Kennedy, but they're coming down the pipeline. All right, everybody. Until next time, we'll see you.